Good morning and welcome to IMA's CMA Candidate Webinar Series. The title of today's presentation is Test-Taking Tips and Strategies. I'm Margaret Lockery and I'll be your host for today's CMA Candidate Webinar. It's a pleasure to have Jody Ryan as part of our program, and she will be serving as moderator for today's event. Jody is the Director of Member Engagement at IMA. In this position, she works with IMA's student and academic communities to create programs, products, and services to meet their specific needs. She also oversees the development of the IMA Student Leadership Conference and fundraising activities. Jody graduated from Lehigh University with a BS degree in accounting. Her work experience prior to joining IMA includes experience at other major accounting associations, as well as exposure to audit, human resources, and the training areas within two of the Big Four public accounting firms. Hi, Jody. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Margaret. I'm pleased to be a part of the CMA Candidate Webinar Series, and on behalf of IMA, I want to welcome everyone to today's session. At this time, I want to introduce you to our featured presenters for today's program. With us today, we have Amy Ford. Amy is an accounting instructor at Western Illinois University, where she teaches principles of financial and managerial accounting courses, as well as accounting for managers in the MBA program. Amy is a certified management accountant and won a 2011 Certificate of Distinguished Performance for earning one of the top overall scores on the CMA exam. Amy is a faculty advisor for the Western Illinois University Student Chapter of IMA and was the 2011 IMA Ursula K. Albers Academic Mentor of the Year. Amy's work experience prior to teaching was at a public accounting firm. Please join me in welcoming Amy Ford.
Thank you. I am really excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to discussing the CMA exam with the attendees today.
Wonderful. And next, I would like to introduce you to our second featured presenter for today's webinar, Lisa Bowden. As Director of Business Development for IMA, Lisa works with companies and educational institutions to create awareness of the benefits of membership in a professional association, as well as the benefits of earning the CMA. Lisa is a CMA and recently earned IMA's CSCA designation, which stands for Certified in Strategy and Competitive Analysis. Please join me in welcoming my colleague, Lisa.
Thanks so much, Jody. I am really pleased to be part of today's program.
And lastly, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for today's program, Lacey Andrew. Lacey is a senior staff accountant at Chase Plastic Services, Inc., one of the nation's largest plastic resin distributors. She graduated with a Master's of Science in Accountancy from Walsh College in 2015 and earned her CMA in August 2018. Prior to her accounting career, Lacey had a career as a nuclear medical technologist. It's great to have you with us, Lacey.
Thank you. I'm glad to be a part of today's program.
And before we begin today's session, I want to go through our learning objectives. For the first objective, you will be able to understand the testing format of the CMA exam, manage your time on the CMA exam, and explain how the essay responses are graded, and also know what to expect at the testing center. And now I'd like to introduce Lisa to start the program.
Thanks so much, Jody. Here's an overview of what we'll be covering today. I'll start with some background on why you should pursue the CMA designation, as well as some details about how to get the certification process started. I'll then cover the exam structure before discussing some helpful study tips and what you can expect when you arrive at the testing center on the day of your exam. Amy will then share some great tips which are related to both the multiple choice and essay portions of the exam. I'll explain the next steps to take to finalize the certification process once you've passed the two exam parts. And then finally, Lacey will share some tips and insights with everyone. I think you'll find it very helpful to hear from a new CMA, someone who's gone through the process very recently. The CMA is a very rigorous exam, and it's also very relevant. It tests the critical skills and knowledge required of accounting and financial professionals who are working in business. IMA has conducted salary surveys for the U.S., the Middle Eastern and Chinese markets, for the whole global hiring markets. And in all cases, professionals who hold the CMA designation are on average likely to earn quite a bit more in annual compensation than their non-certified peers. The bottom line here is that CMA certification provides a positive return on investment. It is worth your while to earn the CMA. I see that we've arrived at our first poll question, so I'm going to turn your attention to our moderator, Jody.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Attendees should see the first polling question now open on your console. I would like to remind all participants that you may begin responding to the poll questions as soon as they are visible on your screen. You will have about 30 seconds to respond to each of the polling questions today. Once the responses have been tabulated, we will come back to discuss the results. Our first question today is, do you plan to sit for the CMA exam within the next 12 months? A, yes. B, no. Be sure to click the submit button so that your answer is properly recorded. While everyone is submitting their responses, I'm going to turn the presentation back to Lisa.
Well, thanks, Jody. Let's take a look at our responses. Oh, this is great. So an overwhelming majority of you are planning to sit for the CMA within the next 12 months. So what we're going to be covering here today is extremely relevant and very important for you to know, because we want to make sure that you know exactly what to expect when you get to that testing center, and that you're using some of the tips that we provide you with. So this is really great. Before sitting for any exam, it's really important to it's important to understand all of the administrative details that you'll need to handle. The first step is to join IMA. For professional members, the annual membership fee is $230 per year, plus a $15 one-time processing fee. For students, the annual membership fee is just $39. The next step is to declare your CMA candidacy, and you do that by paying the CMA program entrance fee. For professional members, that fee is $250. For students, the fee is just $188. This is a one-time fee, and it's valid for 3 years. Finally, once you're ready to sit for an exam, you'll register for a specific exam part in a specific testing window and pay the exam part fee. For professional members, the exam fee is $415 per part. For student members, the exam fee is $311 per part, as they receive the automatic 25% student discount on the exam. So it's really important to understand how the exam is structured and what's covered in each part. You want to have a complete understanding of how this exam is delivered, and the exam is comprised of 2 parts. It tests your fluency in both accounting and finance. The exams are each 4 hours in length. They start with 100 multiple choice questions and conclude with 2 essay scenarios, which are like mini cases. The exam parts can be taken in any order. So you don't have to start with part 1, but if you feel that that's where you want to start, that's perfectly fine. But you do have that flexibility. The part 1 exam is called Financial Reporting, Planning, Performance, and Control. It has 5 sections to it. The first section, External Financial Reporting Decisions, really focuses on your financial accounting topics. The next 3 sections, Planning, Budgeting, and Forecasting, Performance Management, and Cost Management, focus on your managerial and cost accounting topics. And then finally, Internal Controls. For that section, the focus is on best practices in internal controls. Part 2 is called Financial Decision Making, and it has 6 sections. It starts with financial statement analysis, which is calculating and interpreting financial ratios for the most part. Corporate finance, which is looking at risk and return models and different financial instruments. Decision analysis, that's your variable and fixed costs, understanding your cost structure of your organization to make good strategic decisions. Risk management, that's enterprise risk management, where you're looking at the overall internal and external risks to an organization. Investment decisions involves a lot of your capital budgeting and investing for the future for your organization. And then finally, professional ethics, which is such an important topic to IMA and also to the profession. Now, what you're seeing on the screen is the CMA exam content through calendar year 2019. IMA has announced that effective January 1st of 2020, there will be some changes to the CMA exam content. Now, IMA conducts market research every 4 to 5 years to ensure that the exam is covering the appropriate content, and this is a best practice for professional certification exams. In 2020, there will be a few changes to the exam content, with the main change being the addition of a new section in Part 1 titled Technology and Analytics. So the exam format in 2020 will be compatible with the current format. And by that I mean that someone who passes Part 1 under the current format, like what you see on the screen right now, they just have to pass Part 2 in the 2020 format and vice versa. So you can combine a Part 1 from this format with a Part 2 from the next and so on. So if you're a CMA candidate or considering becoming a CMA candidate, you can get started now and try to complete at least one exam part during the 2019 calendar year. Again, the reason for this change is that IMA is always focused on providing topics and content that will elevate our members' job performance. Now, in addition to passing the 2 exam parts, CMAs must fulfill both an education and work experience requirement. To learn more about the CMA exam, please visit the IMA website and go to the CMA exam section, and you can get all the information there. The content of this exam is extremely relevant to all accounting and financial professionals who are working in business. The skills and knowledge acquired by professionals who pursue the CMA are relevant and very much needed by organizations of all sizes and in all industries. So we've arrived now at our second poll question. I'll hand it over to Jody again.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. As you know, you may begin responding to the poll questions immediately, and you will have about 30 seconds to respond to each question. Our second question today is, which section of the CMA exam do you expect to be the most challenging for you? A, performance management, B, cost management, C, financial statements analysis, D, corporate finance, or E, other. After choosing an answer, please be sure to click the Submit button located below the response options so that we may record your answer. The poll responses will be tabulated shortly, and then we will discuss the group results together. Now I'm going to turn the presentation back to Lisa.
Well, thanks, Jody. So this is really just, what do you feel will be the most challenging? And it's all over the place, right? Cost management is tested heavily. I know for me, corporate finance is something that I didn't spend as much time doing when I was working on the job. I was more involved with performance management and cost management, but corporate finance I wasn't doing every day. So for me personally, that was a challenge. I'm guessing for people who put other, they might have also been thinking all of the topics are going to be challenging for me. So I can relate to that as well. So now let's discuss how to effectively study for the exam. First, I want to say it is really important to establish a regular study schedule. I'm sure that many of you have demands on your time, between work, family, friends, hobbies, etc. You will need to carve out time in your week to dedicate to studying. The extra time doesn't just appear, the whole weekend can go by, and if you didn't sit down and plan to do some studying, the weekend's over. So you may want to schedule time in your calendar that will be devoted to studying, and be sure to do it in a location that's free from distractions so that you can fully concentrate on the content. Now, this is a very challenging exam, so you'll need to make sure you give yourself enough time to study and prepare. You don't want to be cramming for the exam. Be sure to study topics that you're not comfortable with. What we've heard is that it's very common for people to spend a lot of time studying content that they're familiar with or that they're already really good at. And why do they do that? Because it makes you feel good, right? You go through a problem and you're like, oh, I know the answer to that. Well, it's something that you already know quite well. So be very mindful of how you're spending your study time and make sure that you push yourself to study topics that you find challenging or difficult to understand. Really get into them and understand them. I recommend that you create your own flashcards for formulas and terms that you need to remember, especially in Part 2. There are a lot of formulas that come up with the financial statement analysis section. When you put pencil to paper and write out the formulas and terms, you're actually enhancing the learning process, and you'll be more likely to remember the things that you wrote down in addition to using the flashcards. And the same thing goes for note-taking. After you read from your study materials, write down your notes in your own words. This will also enhance the learning process. We do recommend that you purchase study materials that have been created specifically to prepare candidates for the CMA exam. Once you have those materials, be sure to use them to their fullest potential. And by that I mean that you should not only be reading from the text, but also testing your ability to apply your skills and knowledge to the sample exam questions provided, both multiple choice and essay questions. You'll want to study the exam topics thoroughly. As you work through the sample of questions provided to you with your exam preparation materials, you may become very familiar with the questions, and you may even start to memorize the answers, right? You'll know when that question comes up, I already know what the answer is to it. I've seen it a couple times. Don't let that keep you from fully understanding each question, though. Be sure to take the time to completely understand all of the concepts so that if a question on the CMA exam were similar but slightly different from a practice test question, you'd know how to approach it and answer it correctly. And then finally, it's important to understand that preparing for the CMA exam takes time. We already discussed how you want to plan study time into your schedule. How much time you need to spend preparing will depend on your experience, your skills, how familiar you are with the exam content, how efficient you are with your study time, as well as other factors. Now, once you decide to pursue the CMA and pay your CMA program entrance fee, you will receive access to the CMA Exam Support Package, or ESP. Access to the exam support package is limited to 3 downloads, and you have access to it for 6 months. We do encourage you to save the file when you download it so that you have it available to you beyond the 6-month time period. The ESP includes samples of retired exam questions that can help you to gauge your strengths and weaknesses on the various topics that are tested on the CMA exam. Please note, though, that this is not a complete study program. It's really just intended to help you determine what your study needs may be, where your strengths and weaknesses are. There are several different CMA exam preparation options available to CMA candidates, and you can find them listed on the IMA website. Depending on your study preferences, you can prepare for the exam on your own using self-study materials, or you can sign up for a live instructor-led review course. Self-study programs have become quite sophisticated and very effective over the last several years with engaging lectures and a variety of study tools available to users. Live review courses are available in both the traditional classroom delivery approach as well as in some cases a live online webinar delivery approach. Another approach is to establish a study group either in person or virtual with other CMA candidates. Keep in mind, though, that no matter how you decide to prepare, you'll need to spend a lot of time studying on your own. Even if you have a group, you have to study on your own. A live course or study group can provide great support, but you'll still need to read and work through practice problems on your own in order to be fully prepared for exams. We've arrived at our third poll question, so I'm going to turn your attention back to Jody.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. Attendees may now respond to this poll question as I read through the question. After selecting your answer, please click the Submit button below to ensure that your response is recorded. Our third polling question today is, to prepare for the CMA exam, would you prefer to study on your own, with a group, or take an instructor-led course? So respond either A, I prefer to study on my own, B, I prefer to study with a group, or C, I prefer to take an instructor-led course. Once the responses have been tabulated, we'll review the results. Now I'm going to turn the presentation back to Lisa.
Well, thanks, Jody. So I'm interested to see. I prefer to study on my own and then the instructor-led courses. So I know in the U.S. anyway, self-study is really the predominant approach that most people are taking. And just keep in mind, when you're studying on your own, you want to put some goals in place, which testing window you're aiming for. As you get closer to it, you want to set, schedule your test date. So just try to make yourself very accountable and try to follow a timeline so that you have a goal date out there. And the instructor-led courses are really good. They do provide a lot of structure. You're meeting at certain times, but you also get that support of having the subject matter expert available to you. If you do decide to use a group, I do recommend that you put some structure in place with the group. That maybe you assign each person a week when they're in charge of, reviewing a certain topic. You just use your group time more effectively if you decide to study that way. So that's interesting to see. I want to share an important resource for CMA candidates. It's called the CMA Candidate Handbook, and it's available on the IMA website by going to the CMA certification section. So at imanet.org, then go to the CMA certification and then clicking on the Getting Started tab. From there, you scroll down the page to find the CMA Candidate Handbook. Many of the things that we'll be covering in this webinar can be found in the CMA Candidate Handbook, so it's a great resource for you. And I encourage you to download the handbook and use it as a reference. Now let's talk a bit about the exam testing experience. The CMA exam is a computer-based exam, and it's delivered at Prometric Testing Centers around the world. In order to schedule your exam date and time at Prometric, you'll first need to register with IMA to sit for a specific exam part, so Part 1 or Part 2, as well as a specific testing window, such as May and June 2019. Once you've paid your registration fee to IMA, you'll go to the Prometric website, locate a local testing center, then view the availability at the center during your testing window. The exams can be taken during 3 testing windows each year. Those testing windows are January and February, May and June, and September and October. Those are the only months during which the CMA exam can be taken. I'll now provide you with some details about what you should expect when you arrive at the testing center on your test date. The goal here is to familiarize you with the testing experience so that you won't be stressed by learning about some of these details on your exam day. So first, I recommend that you arrive early. It's recommended that you arrive at least 30 minutes prior to your testing time. I also suggest that you make sure you know how to get to the testing center before your test date. If you haven't been there before, you might want to drive over, a few days before or the weekend before the exam, just so you know where it's located. You don't want to be lost on your exam day, adding some extra stress to an already stressful day. When you arrive at the testing center, you will be asked to provide personal identification to the testing center employee. That can be in the form of a valid passport or 2 original forms of ID, of which at least one will have your photo and both will have your signature. Please keep in mind that Social Security cards and student ID cards are not considered to be acceptable forms of identification at the testing center. Once you check in, then you'll be given a small locker to store your personal items, such as a purse or wallet, coat or jacket. You cannot have those things or your personal items with you when you take the test. You may also be asked to remove items from your pocket, and the testing center proctor may use a wand to detect if you have any metal items on you. You'll be taking your exam at a desk that has a PC on it and privacy walls on 3 sides. Depending on the testing center, you may have people on either side of you taking exams as well. Now, you are allowed to bring your own calculator with you for the exam. The CMA exam's calculator policy, which is in that CMA handbook that I referenced earlier, it states that you can use a simple 6-function calculator or specific models of financial calculators. If you decide to use a simple 6-function model, then it has to be one that is powered by battery or is solar powered. It cannot be plugged in. It has only 6 functions: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, square root, and percent. It is not programmable, and it does not use any type of tape like an adding machine. Now, if you use a financial calculator, it must be one of the following models: the Hewlett-Packard 10B2, the Hewlett-Packard 10B2 Plus, Hewlett-Packard 12C, or HP 12C Platinum, or also the Texas Instruments BA2 Plus. Now, please note that the HP 10B2 Plus has just been added to the list of approved calculators effective with the May-June 2019 testing window. I highly recommend that you use the same calculator at the testing center that you've been using to study for the CMA exam. Because you want to be really familiar with, how to use your calculator and not be learning it during the exam, right? The testing center will provide you with scrap paper and pencils. You'll not be able to be allowed to bring your own scrap paper or pencils. You'll receive 1 booklet of scrap paper to start and can request a second booklet if needed. Try to be neat when using the scrap paper so that you can refer back to it as needed. So for example, if problem number 10 requires a lot of calculations, write your work down on the scrap paper and be sure to number it problem number 10. You may even draw a box around it or something. That way, if you have time to review problem 10 later on, you'll be able to easily find your notes and calculations related to that problem. So being neat with your scrap paper can save you time. Now, once you're seated at your workplace and have been logged into the Prometric server, you'll be given the opportunity to take the CMA exam tutorial. You will want to take advantage of this opportunity. While the objective of the tutorial is to provide you with some time to familiarize yourself with the testing software, for example, how to view the next question, go back to a question, or mark one of the questions for review so that you can come back to it later, this is also a good time to take a deep breath, try to relax a bit, and get mentally prepared for the exam. You can also use this time to write down some notes on your scrap paper, such as formulas or definitions that you have in your short-term memory. Knowing that you've written down some of your definitions and formulas may make you feel more confident when taking the exam. Please note that you are not allowed to have any food or drinks at your testing workstation. That even includes bottles or cups of water, hard candies, and cough drops. And there aren't any scheduled breaks in the exam. While bathroom breaks are allowed, in order to take one, you'll need to be signed out and then signed back into your exam by a proctor. And during that time, your exam clock will be running. So I recommend that you do your best to plan your day so that you don't have to take a bathroom break during the exam if possible. And finally, I want to mention that Prometric has implemented a fingerprinting requirement for everyone taking the exam. This is done to ensure the integrity of the testing process and is already being done for many different exams administered by Prometric. At this time, I'd like to hand the presentation over to Amy, who will provide you with some valuable strategies to apply while you're taking the exam.
Thank you, Lisa. To pass the Certified Management Accounting Exam, the CMA exam, you will need knowledge, confidence, and effective time management. Acquiring and refining your knowledge can be achieved through the various learning options that Lisa previously mentioned. So she talked about self-study, live instructor-led courses, and online study groups. Adequate preparation will ensure that you've gained the knowledge necessary for successful completion of the exam. This preparation will also provide you with the confidence that you have indeed gained that mastery of critical skills and knowledge in planning, analysis, control, and decision support. Having adequate knowledge and confidence are only two of the three components to successfully completing the exam. The third is time management. Now, the maximum amount of time for the 100 multiple choice questions is 3 hours, followed by 1 hour for the essay questions. Now, you will want to be efficient in answering the multiple choice questions to ensure that you're able to answer all 100 questions. Now, when I prepared for the CMA exam, I found that the best way to achieve all three of these was practice. I used those exam prep materials that Lisa was talking about, and I practiced with multiple choice questions, especially to improve my knowledge, build my confidence, and pace myself with effective time management. Let's get started with some exam strategies that will allow you to have that best opportunity for choosing the correct answer on the 100 multiple choice questions. Now, I would encourage you to employ these tactics as you're studying for the exam. First, make sure you read through the information and focus on the stem or the question. There may be distractors in the question, such as extra information not needed to answer the question. Once you know what the question is, answer the question in your mind before looking at the answer options. When you're able to arrive at an answer prior to reviewing the options and then subsequently find it in the list of options, now you're more likely to feel confident with your answer. But make sure that you do read the entire list of the 4 answer choices, A, B, C, and D, before you make your final answer selection. Also, pay close attention to the wording of each question. Words like except, least, not, and most can occasionally be overlooked. So on the CMA exam, these words will actually be in a bold font, so you want to pay close attention to them. Another strategy that some candidates find helpful is the 3-pass technique. First, read the questions and answer the non-computational ones. Mark the others. Now you have the computation questions left to answer, which are all marked. Second, answer the computational questions, leaving the questions that you're unsure about marked. And then third, review and answer all the marked questions. Now these marked questions that are all that's left, these are the computational questions that you're unsure about. This type of exam approach, it ensures that you've seen every question on the exam. You don't want your time to be up and to not have seen some of the questions on the exam because maybe those were the questions that would have been the easy ones, the ones that you knew the answers to very quickly. We have some more suggestions on approaching the multiple choice questions on the CMA exam. Next is answering all the questions. An unanswered question will be treated the same way as an incorrect answer. You'll not receive any credit at all. Now, more than likely, you'll be able to narrow a question down to maybe 2 possible answers. Using your knowledge, you should then choose the answer that you believe is correct. And at this point, you have a 50-50 chance of getting the question correct, whereas if you didn't answer it at all, you'd have no credit at all. Now, due to the time constraints for the exam, you'll want to make sure that you do not spend too much time on any one question. There'll be 100 multiple choice questions that you'll be given a maximum of 3 hours to complete. So on average, you'll have about 1.5 minutes to spend on each question. What you'll find is that some questions can be answered very quickly, so definitely less than 1.5 minutes. So then you'll be able to spend more time on lengthier or the more challenging or the more computational-based questions. Maintaining a confident, positive attitude throughout the exam will encourage your ability to recall knowledge. Now, if you have time left once you've completed the multiple choice question, you should review, correct, and revisit the more difficult questions. Now, before we wrap up this slide, I have some good news. If you are able to complete the multiple choice section in less than the allotted 3 hours, that unused time can be carried forward into the essay section. Now, but keep in mind that once you leave the multiple choice section, you're not permitted to return to it. Now, here is a multiple choice question. This is a sample screenshot from what it would look like. This is what the screen will look like when you're taking the exam at the Prometric Center. In the middle top portion of your screen is the time remaining for the section. Now, in this case, this is for multiple choice questions. You'll want to make sure that you have ample time to answer all 100 questions. Notice the progress completion area that will help keep you on track. The red arrow is pointing to where you will use your mouse to select the correct answer. You may select an answer by clicking on any part of the answer. Now, here are some other important areas on your screen that you should become familiar with. So you see calculator. This is found between the question and then the ABC choices. Now, this calculator is available to use, but we recommend that you use your own calculator rather than using the on-screen calculator. Now I want to point your direction to the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Okay, so there we have the back button. The back button will take you to the previous multiple choice question. Now it's grayed out here because, well, this is the first question, so you can't go back on the screenshot. There's also the next button. That will take you to the next multiple choice question. Then the other button, notice the little flag button. It looks like a little flag. It's to the left of the back button. This is the button that I was talking about. This is the button that allows you to mark or highlight a question to be reviewed later. Now, this next section is meant to assist you in becoming comfortable with the essay portion of the CMA exam. Now, first of all, don't be afraid of the essay section on the CMA exam. Now, I always encourage my students to look at the essays as a chance to show off. The essays are a chance to show off your mastery of the critical skills and knowledge in planning, analysis, control, and decision support. By showing all your work and assumptions, you will give the essay graders every opportunity to give you partial credit. Now, there will be 2 essay scenarios per part of the CMA exam. There will be between 4 and 7 questions for each essay scenario. So you're following the math? That's going to mean it's going to be equivalent of anywhere between 8 and 14 questions in the essay section. So be sure to keep that in mind as you're working through the essay portion of the exam. You can scroll between each of the essay questions and their respective scenarios. By reviewing both of the essay questions before you begin answering, you'll be able to determine, how much time you would need to respond accordingly. So for example, when I read the two essays, I like to start by completing the one that's going to be the easier of the two for me. So that leaves me with any extra time to finish the second essay, which maybe is the one that's more difficult from my perspective. Now here are some additional strategies that include paying close attention to the verbs in the question. Defining terms will not add any points to your score if the essay says that you need to compare and contrast. Read the entire question to understand all the requirements. You may have more than one requirement. So for example, something like define ABC and interpret its applicability to XYZ. So in this example, the essay is stating to define and interpret. So you wouldn't want to only provide a definition when answering this question. Now, writing skills are important in the essay portion. Now, the ICMA, that stands for the Institute of Certified Management Accountants, is the certification affiliate of the IMA. This organization is responsible for administering and grading the exam. Now, they have specific grading criteria, including the use of standard English, organization, and clarity. So in the big picture, overall, the essay graders are looking for effective writing skills. Now I have a few final points in regards to answering the essays. Be brief and to the point. More words do not equate to additional points. So make sure you include only the relevant information. Bullet points are considered an acceptable format. And then never, ever, ever, never leave a question blank. A blank question is 0 points. At a minimum, just jot down an outline of your main points or the ideas that you had when you read the question. Now I have some more good news for you. Essay graders want to give you points. Remember, show off your mastery of the material. If the question asks for 3 reasons, you can go ahead and list 4 or 5 if you have the time. You'll not be penalized for answering extra. And really, you're giving yourself a better chance of earning full credit on that particular question in case one of the items in your list is incorrect. Now, I've got a couple more slides here that are going to highlight the mechanics of maneuvering through the essay section. You'll type your answers into a text box that's very similar to Microsoft Word, but there's much less functionality available. One of the functions that is not available is the ability to change the font of your text. You will not be able to bold, underline, or italicize. Candidates will be able to cut and paste within a question, but will not have the ability to copy and paste between different questions. And I know copy and paste is something I've used a lot, especially if I'm answering an essay where I have to do an analysis of 3 different scenarios, and I can set up all 3 scenarios the same way. You can use some time advantage when I approach that essay. Now, finally, be sure to use all the time available to you. Review the requirements and your answers. Be sure that each requirement has been answered adequately. Now here's a sample screenshot of an essay. On the left pane, or the left side of your screen, is the essay scenario. This is the situation you're analyzing. The right pane is where you see the specific question and the area where you type your response. Notice this is question 3. Remember, you have 2 essay scenarios, and each scenario could have 4 to 7 questions. The total test time remaining is displayed above the question. The specific question is identify 3 possible synergies or benefits of mergers and acquisitions. On the question pane, you have the time value tables available if you need them for the question, as well as the calculator. Then on the bottom right of your screen, do you see that same area there? You have that flag, back, and next button. Those are the same one that you saw on the multiple choice question. The back and next buttons allow you to move back or forth within the essay questions of the scenario. Now, I know I want to talk about test anxiety. I'm sure we've all experienced it at some point in our life. And I know that it affects some people more than others. Keep in mind that everybody gets nervous about exams, but that's up to you to figure out a way to manage your nervous energy. Try to remain positive. Remember that some anxiety may be good for you, as it can keep you motivated and perhaps make you focus and work more efficiently. Try to do your best and be realistic. Keep in mind that this is not your only chance to take this exam. If you don't do well, you could always take it again. It's not uncommon for test takers to draw a blank or forget how to do something when taking an exam. If that happens to you, move on and come back to the question later. And finally, effective study and preparation is the best way to reduce your test anxiety. The more prepared you are for the exam, the more confident you'll feel, and as a result, you'll feel less stressed when taking the exam. If you practice using the format and the screen similar to the actual testing screens at Prometric, that can really help. It did when I took my exam. Let's talk about a bit about how the exam is scored. Now, first of all, the weighting of the two exam parts is based on the relative amount of the time spent on each part. So you'll be spending about 3 of the 4 hours on the multiple choice questions. And as a result, 75% of your exam score will come from the multiple choice section. Likewise, 25% of your exam score will come from your performance on the essay section. When you complete the multiple choice section of the exam, the computer will be checking to see if you earned at least 50% on that first multiple choice section of the exam. If you did earn at least 50%, then you'll proceed to the essay portion of the exam. You won't learn what your score was on the multiple choice section. You'll just know that you earned 50% or higher. Now, if you haven't answered at least 50% of the multiple choice questions correctly, the test will end at that time for you. Exam results are available approximately 6 weeks after the end of the month in which you tested. This time is used to review and grade your responses to the essay questions. So for example, if you sit for the exam during the month of May, your results will be available around the middle of July. And if you sit during the month of June, your results will be available around the middle of August. Your exam results will be emailed to you, and they'll also be posted to the IMA dashboard under the transcript section of your profile. The CMA exam uses a scaled scoring approach, which is similar to what other well-known and highly respected exams use. The maximum score is 500, and a score of 360 points or higher is considered a passing score. If you pass the exam, that's great. If that was your first exam part, then you can start preparing for the next exam part. For candidates who have already completed their education and or work experience requirements, they can send in their transcript or work experience form anytime after they pay the entrance fee. If IMA has this information before a candidate passes their last exam part, this will speed up the certification process. Now, if you don't pass, don't be too down on yourself. The CMA is a very rigorous exam. You'll want to create a plan to retake the exam as soon as possible. You can even sit again during the very next testing window if you'd like. Just don't give up. Prometric does send a performance report to candidates who don't pass the exam. It should arrive about 2 weeks after your exam results are available. It's a very basic feedback report that will provide you with a comment of S for satisfactory, M for marginal, or U for unsatisfactory for each of the 5 sections of each exam part. Now, if you don't pass, I recommend that you do not wait for the performance report from Prometric in order to plan your studies. So it provides very basic feedback, and I think that you'll probably already know which subjects that you need to focus on. All right, we've arrived at our final poll question, so I'm going to turn your attention to our moderator, Jody.
Great. Thank you so much, Amy. As with the previous questions, you may respond immediately while I read the question and response options. After choosing from one of the following options, please click the Submit button located on the right below the response options to be sure that your answer is properly recorded. Our fourth and final poll question is, are there other employees at your company who would benefit from learning more about the CMA or by pursuing the CMA designation? A, yes. B, no. C, I don't know. Please take a moment to respond, and then we will review the group results. Now I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Amy.
Thanks, Jody. All right, so we're going to take a look at these results. So that's great. About 45% of you said yes, there are other employees at your company who would benefit from learning more about the CMA or pursuing this designation. Now, a lot of you also said, I don't know, and I would suggest this is a great conversation to have at your next staff meeting or at your next training session where you talk about certification and the opportunities, and you talk about what people are doing in their current roles and how the CMA exam might be able to benefit them in their current career. So I think that talking about the CMA exam with others is a great place to start at your own individual company. All right, so Lisa is our IMA expert, so I want her to walk you through the steps to becoming a CMA once you've passed the exam.
Yeah, so thanks, Amy. Now let's talk about what you need to do once you pass those exams. That's the great part, right? The fun part. First, if you haven't already done so, you'll want to request to have your college or university send an official transcript to IMA. Next, you'll need to complete and submit the experience verification form that's on the IMA website. This needs to be completed in order to validate that you've fulfilled your work experience requirement. Complete instructions on how to complete both the education and experience requirements are available on the IMA website. So just go to Taking the Exam under the CMA section of the exam, then click on Get Certified to see the steps to finalize the certification process. So once these things have been verified, you'll receive your CMA certificate number, and your certificate will be mailed to you within 2 to 3 weeks, and it's at that time that you can call yourself a CMA. All CMAs do have an annual CPE, or continuing professional education requirement, of 30 hours per year, of which at least 2 hours have to be in ethics training. Your CPE requirement will begin in the calendar year after you pass both exam parts. So if you pass both exam parts in 2019, you need to start reporting your CPE in 2020. So before we conclude today's session, I would like to have our new CMA, Lacey Andrew, share a few of her study and preparation tips with you.
Thank you, Lisa. I think having the support of your family and friends is crucial. When you're preparing for the CMA exam, it's very, very time-consuming, and you will not be able to devote the time to them that you normally would. And this includes maybe some responsibilities that you take care of all the time. If you have everyone's expectations in the same place, it'll help relieve any stress or conflict that can arise from this. Also, to continue on a common theme throughout this presentation is make sure you have the time to commit. Don't plan any big events or trips during your study time. If you have a friend that's getting married, postpone it. With all of the things that are involved in doing events like that, you're not going to have the proper time to study, and you need all of that time to prepare. I also I was working full-time while I studied, and a few days before each exam, I also took some time off from work so I could focus on my final preparation. And before you begin, you should make a detailed study schedule that you can stick to. I used the 16-week study schedule provided by my test prep software, and I also set aside 2 to 3 hours every night after work to watch the video lectures and to fully read the materials so I had a good understanding. And if time permitted at night, I would start taking practice quizzes for that section. My weekends, I scheduled one day for family time and one day for studying. And then this is the time that I would take several sessions of practice questions and essays to make sure that I had a solid understanding of the section. And then before you move on to the next section, make sure you have a high degree of understanding in that. It's really important. It will relieve your anxiety if you feel that you have a good hold on that material before moving on. As I continued on through the study schedule, I would still go back to previous sessions and keep quizzing myself so that I could keep everything fresh. I also utilized reporting software that my test prep had available. I would focus, it would give you your average scores of all of your sections. I used that especially toward the end of my study section to focus on those areas where I had the lower scores. And I encourage you, take as many practice quizzes, exams, essays as you need or as allowed. I answered over 7,000 multiple choice questions studying for both exams. So don't be afraid if you feel like you need a lot to study. It's all worth it. It pays off in the end. And then I think this is something that I wish someone would have told me is if I could go back and do things differently, I would have scheduled my exams a little different. I did do 2 back-to-back test scheduling windows, and I chose the last test date available in each of them. I really wish that I would have chosen one of the earlier exam dates for the first part and a later one for the second part, because I ended up finishing my first exam, and I had to immediately start studying for the second exam. It really would have been better to have a few weeks to relax before preparing for the next exam. And then one more quick tip, for those of you that are working full-time, I would try to schedule your exam on a Friday so you have the weekend to relax before you return to work. This is a very hard exam. It's doable, but you know, as your test nervousness gets high, you know, having time to relax afterward is going to be good.
Well, thanks so much, Lacey. I really appreciate you sharing your tips and insights, and I think that our attendees will also appreciate that as well as they're preparing to sit for the CMA exam. I hope you've all found this session to be very helpful, you know, whether you're preparing to sit for an exam part in the upcoming testing window or, you know, sometime in the next year. We wish you all the best of luck on the CMA exam.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to Lisa, Amy, and Lacey. They gave so many great test-taking tips and strategies. I hope everyone on the line feels much more comfortable after hearing this presentation. But we also did get a lot of questions, more than I've ever seen on any webinar. So I'd like to begin to address some of those questions. Many of the questions focused on the calculator policy and scrap paper. So Lisa or Amy, would you like to address that issue?
Yeah, so I did want to mention, you know, the calculator policy, it is listed thoroughly in the CMA candidate handbook, which I referenced earlier. So remember that for the calculators, you do need to follow the specific calculators that are available, either that 6-function calculator or the Hewlett-Packard models, or the One Texas Instrument model that is available. So you need to follow the calculator policy. So, you know, make sure you download the CMA candidate handbook, check out the calculator policy, and confirm that the calculator you're using does comply with that. Now, there were a lot of questions about, you know, what if you could take your own calculator. Yes, you should take your own calculator to the testing center. I know that at some testing centers they will give you a simple calculator if you want it, but you really want to have the calculator that you've been studying with and that you're familiar with. The other thing too is that sometimes there's like an on-screen calculator available. You do not want to use it. It's very cumbersome. It's very, it's not swift. You know, you're not going to be able to use it very efficiently. So check out to make sure that your calculator meets the requirements and that you can, you know, take it with you to the testing center. So that's the one that you're comfortable using. And then on the scrap paper, with scrap paper, you will receive 10 unlined sheets of scrap paper. Now, they might not all be white. Sometimes I've heard of people getting like a pastel, pink, light pink sheets of paper, but you will get 10 sheets of paper. They are stapled together, and then if you need more, you can ask for more. I don't think you should need more than the 10 pages because think about it, it's 10 pages back, double-sided, so it's really 20 pages of scrap paper. And again, like I told you as a tip, you want to be very neat when you're using your scrap paper. So you can refer back to any calculations that you made before.
Great. And also, how about the IDs? We had a lot of questions about the IDs that people should bring to the testing center.
Yeah, so I want to repeat that too. Again, that's in the CMA Candidate Handbook, so you can review it, when you get closer to your test date to make sure you have the correct form or forms of ID. The first one is you can bring a valid, signed, non-expired, government-issued passport. So if you have a valid, signed, non-expired passport, that can serve as your ID by itself. If you don't, then you need to have two forms of non-expired identification. One needs to have a photograph, so whether that's a driver's license or a government ID card or something like that, both need to have your signature. So again, that is included in the CMA Candidate Handbook as well.
Great. A couple other questions. Does the testing software spell check in the essay question area?
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the essay question section. So we actually will hold a webinar. We hold one every August that focuses just on the essay portion of the exam, and you can download last August's essay webinar to go through more details about the essay portion of the exam. But the text box is very basic. It does not have spell check. So you just want to do your best to try to spell as best you can. It does not have spell check though. And I know another thing too, Jody, that a lot of people ask is about creating schedules like a balance sheet or a budget or something like that. And we do not have a spreadsheet tool in the essay portion of the exam. We only have the text box. So in the essay portion of the exam, though, they are aiming to test your very high-level skills, your critical thinking skills and your strategic analysis skills. So you are not going to be asked to create a schedule that requires a lot of columns and rows, and you don't have because you don't have the a spreadsheet to do that in. So you're not going to be expected to do that in the text box. Okay. Now you might have a few calculations in the essay portion of the exam, but those you can type into the text box. And like Amy mentioned, you want to show all of your work, all of your assumptions to get the highest points awarded for the essay portion of the exam.
Great. I think we have time for two other questions. One, a quick one. Can I use earplugs during the exam to drown out some of the background noise?
So I'm pretty sure that they will give you some headphones. Lacey, did you have any headphones or earplugs given to you at the testing center?
Yes, they were available. They were hanging on the cubicle wall next to me.
Yeah, so I remember that too when I sat for the CSCA, and I think I did put those headphones over my ears because I just wanted to be able to focus and not have anything distract me. So I don't think you'll be able to bring your own because, they're very strict with, bringing in your personal things, but you will have something available to you. And I think it will be headphones as opposed to earplugs. But that could vary by testing center, but you will have something to help drown out outside noises.
Okay, and then the last thing is if you could just go over quickly some of the content changes that are going to happen as of January 2020.
Yeah, I know that's really on people's minds. So again, I do encourage you to go to the IMA website under the CMA section, and at the top of getting started, there is a link to see the changes. There's a whole web page that's devoted to the changes to the 2020 exam, including a video from Dennis Whitney, who oversees our certifications. So I do encourage you to check that out. So the exam is staying the same for 2019. So this next testing window, May, June, as well as September, October, no changes. Effective with the January February 2020 exam testing window, the new changes will take effect. And there are a few different changes in sections, minor changes. The major change is that a new section is being added under Part 1. So it's still a two-part exam. It's just Part 1 will now have 6 sections instead of 5. It's called Technology and Analytics. And again, if you are in this exam process now, go ahead and continue taking your exams, and you can put a Part 1 and a Part 2 together from these two different formats, from the 2019 version, the current version, and then into the 2020 version. So don't let it slow you down or change your progress because they are interchange. You can add them together to fulfill the testing requirement.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much again to Lisa, Amy, and Lacey for their time. And for some final comments, I'd like to turn the presentation back over to our host, Margaret.
Thanks, Jody. At this time, I'd like to thank our presenters, Lisa Bowden, Amy Ford, and Lacey Andrew, for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. We're very appreciative that they've made time for IMA and for our audience today. And also, thank you, Jody Ryan, for moderating today's event. As a last step, please be sure to complete the event evaluation survey, which should be visible on your browser. If it has not popped open, please click the resources icon at the bottom of your screen for access. I want to again thank all of you for your participation in today's event, your commitment to IMA, and your professional development through IMA's CMA Candidate Webinar Series. I look forward to spending time with you again soon, when we'll enjoy some more interesting and beneficial information through the IMA webinars.